Aminata isn't even in her teens, but she's already 2 years behind at school. Islamist militants forced her local school in central Mali to shut. So 2 months ago, her parents sent her to live with her aunt, 100 kilometres south from her home, so she could study.
There was fighting there. They burnt the school down. They threatened to hurt, or they killed all the girls who went against what they wanted. That's why I came here.
This school is in Mopti, the regional capital. Around 50 of its pupils are displaced children like Aminata. Many are traumatised.
There are children who, when we ask them to draw something, well, they'll draw a gun. And there are children who suddenly panic when they hear a noise or a bang. It's a form of mental trauma. Over time, we help them channel that trauma, put it into context, and then help forget what happened.
More schools have been closed in this region than anywhere else in Mali. Islamist groups which control much of the area reject secular education or education in French as a colonial inheritance. They only want Quranic schools where the only things taught are Islam and the Quran. Public school teachers are intimidated until they quit. Usman left his village for Mopti. Armed men stormed his school twice. Last year they fired shots, tore down flags and stole teachers' phones and motorbikes.
They threatened us directly. They said they didn't want these schools. They wanted Quranic schools, and that's that. They didn't want to see teachers teaching French.
The authorities do what they can. They speak with communities and have tried to integrate Quranic schools with the public education system. But above all, there's been a military presence as part of a regional security plan that's been in place for a year.
The first step is security. So we have to secure the zones which are controlled by terrorists. We make those zones safe and we hunt down terrorists. And then we reintroduce local government. That's the second step. And the third step is social and economic development. And that's how basic services can return and reopen schools.
Malian authorities say 100 regional schools have already reopened. 30 kilometres north of Mopti is one of them. The Prime Minister himself came to the reopening of Maxwell School in October. It was closed for a year because of an attack on a nearby school where teachers were beaten up.
We're not as scared now because of the security. The army patrol nearly every day in the area.
Teachers had refused to come back to the school unless there was security, and it's already had to shut on days when the military weren't deployed and pupil numbers have dropped.
Villagers here are more frightened than we are. Until now, parents have been too frightened to let their children go to school. They say one day these militants are going to come back here because they've done that before. And they'll make a list of those who are still sending their children to school so they can get back at them later.
The threat is real. The latest visit was only recently.
They came on motorbikes into the village and dug big holes under the trees, put something in them, and then covered them. Then they went scouting around the area, all around the school, and then they left.
Many have fled, and the government is struggling to get people home, particularly in rural areas or in villages where Islamist groups are still active.
This school year, we saw many schools reopen that last year were closed. But over time, many of those reopened schools have closed again. It's not a positive picture on the whole, in the north or the centre of the country.
National education unions accuse the government of lying about how many schools have reopened. And according to UNICEF, there are fresh closures. 53 schools have shut so far this term alone.